It's Wednesday, November 9. In the headlines, the national budget now stands at $972 billion. Regionally, Barbados Prime Minister speaks at COP27. And in sports, Shivnarayan Chandapal now among the legends of International Cricket Council's Hall of Fame. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The planned expenses for the current fiscal year is expected to be $60 billion higher than previously anticipated. That's the word from Minister of Finance and the Public Sector, Dr. Nigel Clark. The additional sum has pushed the total planned expenditure this year to $972 billion.
The Finance Minister says the increased allocation was due mainly to the government's response to the impact the Russia-Ukraine war has had on Jamaica. The war, which began on February 24, sent food and fuel prices surging, pushing inflation in Jamaica earlier this year to an 11-year high.
The impact of the unanticipated Russia-Ukraine conflict on individual countries led to countries implementing various measures to address inflation and its impact on their population and on the wider macroeconomy, and Jamaica is among those countries. The unprogrammed response to the impact of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, i.e. would not have been in the budget that was tabled on the 7th of February, but it was required. It is among the factors necessitating the tabling of the first supplementary estimates.
A total of $7.2 billion was spent to help the most vulnerable, and those sums are now being properly accounted for in the budget.
The first was the energy co-pay, through which the government contributed 20% of the JPS bill for the 4 months April to July of 2022 of all postpaid households that consume 200 kilowatts of electricity or less, and $3,000 per month over the same period for prepaid residential customers. Expenditure under this energy co-pay program was $2.2 billion. There was a gas relief program and loan grant to owners of contract carriage and route taxi vehicles consisting of $600 million to be disbursed as a grant and $200 million in loans accessible through microfinance institutions under an unlending facility managed by the DBJ.
Dr. Clark also notes the ongoing $600 million gas relief grant and the $200 million loan facility to taxi owners. $702 million went to both the Program of Advancement through Health and Education PATH and non-PATH beneficiaries to help students. Others were given poor relief grants. An additional $1.5 billion went to poor households to help parents with back-to-school expenses.
We had one-off grants to public servants with gross earnings of $1.5 billion or less, disbursed to ministries, departments, and agencies through the Accountant General's Central Treasury Management System, and this cost $353 million. Madam Speaker, grants to pensioners in receipt of pension at $1.5 million or less per annum, with $523 million allocated to NIS pensioners and $100 million to 10,000 social pensioners was also disbursed through the Ministry of Labour and Social Security.
But the biggest increase in the budget, accounting for about a third, is the money that has been set aside to compensate public sector workers while negotiating for the wage and fringe benefits.
The supplementary budget table also contemplates an increase of $21.1 billion in compensation of employees. This arises primarily from the discussions with public sector unions and staff associations in respect of the compensation restructure program for implementation during this fiscal year. Also contributing to this increase, Madam Speaker, is a $2.2 billion amount requested by the Ministry of Health and Wellness to facilitate the payment of salary-related allowances.
He also pointed to monies used for patching roads and drain cleaning, funds to purchase drugs and to settle bills owed by the regional health authorities, and subvention to the Jamaica Urban Transit Company. Then there is the South Coast Highway Improvement Program.
Capital expenditure reflects a net increase of $1.3 billion above the approved budget, driven mainly by the additional allocation of $4.1 billion to the South Coast Highway Improvement Program to facilitate mobilization of the 5 remaining work packages and the installation of water lines.
Dr. Clark told the House that the additional $600 billion the government is proposing to spend will be financed primarily through an expected $65.5 billion increase in revenue flows. He told Parliament that at the end of September 2022, total revenue flows were $40.4 billion above budget, including $35 billion for tax revenue, and this performance has been factored into the current forecast, which anticipates total revenue flows of $815.3 billion for the fiscal year which ends on March 31, 2023. For PBCJ News, I'm Carla Thomas Hewitt.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness is refuting claims and rumors that the commonly known prime ministerial residence Vale Royal will be knocked down to be made into a parliament building. Maya Chung has that report.
Speaking in the November 8, 2022 sitting of the House of Representatives, the Prime Minister's utterances came in response to questions posed by East St. Andrew Member of Parliament Julian Robinson.
Whatever we decide to do with the property, the neighborhood and the general community must be consulted. Madam Speaker, I'm certain that I will have opportunity with the follow-on question, but I think I should just say it clearly here. There is no intent to knock down Vale Royal and have it sold or developed into apartments. It is utter nonsense.
Prime Minister Holness, in response to PNP MP Julian Robinson's series of questions on the matter, said that there are several ideas about the property that are being processed currently.
Vale Royal will continue, however, to facilitate, where possible, protocol activities and other activities related to the office of the Prime Minister. It is proposed, Madam Speaker, that the Vale Royal House and the property could be repurposed to include a library and museum of all Prime Ministers, that is a repository of documents and memorabilia of our Prime Ministers. That's one suggestion that has been made.
In addition, he said making Vale Royal a protocol house for visiting officials is also being evaluated. A third option, he said, was to see Vale Royal being integrated and made available to government officials and ministers for use for various approved activities. The PM took a decision and said that certain kinds of events and activities had been stopped as Vale Royal had become unsafe. He says sufficient allocations will be done to protect the building, which he termed a national asset.
Based on an assessment of Vale Royal, the grounds and the buildings, which was done as far back as 2013, it has been noted that there are significant structural problems which would limit the use of Vale Royal. Based on the level of deterioration, the current maintenance regime would not be adequate, as the need for rehabilitative work would be over and above the available resources. Madam Speaker, in the last 3 years, we have seen further deterioration in certain sections of the building, and we have seen some failures in the facade and in certain areas, particularly the exterior ceiling work. These failures, Madam Speaker, would have significantly and further limited the use of the building. And Madam Speaker, we took a decision that we would not use the premises for certain kinds of events and activities because of the concerns for the safety of the persons who would be in the building and for the protection of the building itself as a national monument.
Mr. Holness said Vale Royal has been recognized and treated as a national monument since 1958 under the Jamaica National Commission Act. He advised that the act was repealed and replaced by the Jamaica Heritage Trust Act of 1985. The records show that Vale Royal was listed in the Jamaica Gazette of 1988 and 1991, respectively, as a national monument. He said in recent times it would not have been prudent to increase maintenance allocations for Vale Royal within the context of the COVID-19 pandemic.
This year, however, we have started considerations as to the provisions that should be made in the upcoming budget to increase the allocations, not to do anything dramatic because we have to be very careful how we make such allocations, but certainly to make allocations sufficient to preserve and protect this national asset.
Prime Minister Holness indicated the government is currently receiving costings for restoration of Vale Royal. Reporting for PBCJ News, I'm Maya Chung.
The Jamaica Customs Agency, JCA, is playing its part in the government's Get Every Illegal Gun campaign. According to a press release, the Tell Us campaign is aimed against criminal networks that seek to import illegal guns through the nation's controlled borders. Commissioner of Customs Velma Ricketts-Walker said the agency continues to be vigilant and aggressive in its fight against the importation of illegal firearms and other contraband, and will continue to heighten its efforts in combating illegal trade. She says, quote, that any efforts to address crime and threats in our country are most effective when they involve strong collaboration between law enforcement entities, communities, and citizens. The campaign will therefore seek to acquire information from the public, who are encouraged to call Crime Stop at 311 and provide information to them, end quote. She explains in the release that the rewards mechanism is in place for the provision of information leading to arrests and convictions, and it's being done in partnership with Crime Stop, which spearheads the rewards program. The JCA facilitates trade, protects the country's borders, and optimizes revenue collection through collaborative border management. It assists in safeguarding the nation by anticipating and confronting security threats at the borders and beyond through partnerships, intelligence, and innovative capabilities. Veteran dancehall artist and producer DeMarco, born Colin Edwards, has announced he will no longer record music that inspires violence. He made the announcement via social media. His social media post calling for the change has received support of peers including iOctane, Sean Paul, and Gramps Morgan. The artist's decision stems from his support of the Broadcasting Commission's ban on music that promotes scamming, drugs, guns, and other illegal activities on local airwaves. The artist said, given the upsurge in violence in Jamaica, the time has come for those in authority and public figures to be more proactive in stemming the bloodshed. He believes that music is not the only cause of violence, hinting in follow-up posts about the source of illegal guns trade. DeMarco burst onto the scene in 2003 and has since scored hits like Fallen Soldier, True Friends, and Love My Life. The Jamaica Stock Exchange is calling all creatives. We have that story plus your regular market updates coming up in the business report. Danita Rodney is at the business desk.
The Jamaica Stock Exchange, JSE, says that it wants to see more businesses from the cultural and creative industries, CCIS, becoming listed on its platform. Group Business Development Manager at the JSE, Andre Gooden, in an interview with the Jamaica Observer, said that the JSE's initiative through the Caribbean Business Exchange Channel (CBX) is to bring attention to investors on the potential of the creative industries and to sensitize people in the industry about the importance of not just talent, but how to manage the administrative and business side of that talent. This could in turn help to add more credibility and give greater insight into the sector's contributions to the economy. For your market updates, in foreign exchange trading for Tuesday, November 8, the US dollar sold for an average of $154.75. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $114.83. The pound sterling traded for $176.96. And the euro sold for $155.63. In JSE trading, the JSE index declined by 1,329 points. The junior market index advanced by 3 points. The combined market index declined by 1,214 points. And the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 3,612 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 108 stocks, of which 39 advanced, 54 declined, and 15 traded firm. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited Variable Preference, and Blue Power Group Limited. Stocks declined for Access Financial Services Limited, AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, and Barita Investments Limited. Trading firm were CAC 2000 9.5% cumulative redeemable preference shares, Caribbean Cream Limited, and Community and Workers of Jamaica CCU deferred share. The overall volume leaders were Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited with over 5 million units, Darimon Trading Company Limited with over 3 million units, and Radio Jamaica Limited with over 2 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Clico Investment Fund was a volume leader with over 3,000 shares, followed by Calypso Macro Index Fund with 460 shares being traded. Goddard Enterprises Limited was the sole security trading over 40,000 shares on the Barbados Stock Exchange. In regional business in Barbados, some local and medium enterprises are preparing for entry into the global market with a focus on cultural and creative industries through a 4-day program. CBC Barbados tells us more.
Today's session will include things from logistics. We have Goddard Shipping, for example, some other persons who are handling that. We have some other partners such as Export Barbados who will be talking about their Voyager program and really getting them to understand what's required to get their products into the market. And then tomorrow they do one-on-one sessions with attorneys, financiers, other product development specialists to help them pull all of their packages together for their pipelining into market. You have a product, you want to build a market share, you want to ensure that it gets out there. Those are the key things that we're looking at. The legal aspects behind that in terms of intellectual property, in terms of paperwork. When you go into these global markets, you know, it's now competitive. And there are some hurdles you may have to jump simply because your product is so good. And what we're finding is that there are a lot of consumers who want that kind of niche product that is not mass produced, and we actually have the formula for that.
In market data for oil prices slipped after industry data showed that U.S. crude stockpiles rose more than expected, and on concerns that a rebound in COVID-19 cases in top importer China would hurt fuel demand. Brent crude futures were down 69 cents to $94.67 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate crude futures had fallen 63 cents to $88.28 a barrel. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, the 2022 United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP27, opened in Egypt on Sunday, and Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley told world leaders they need to understand why the climate fight is not getting any further ahead.
I don't need to repeat that this is the COP that needs action. All of us, as a chorus, have said that. I don't need to repeat the horror and the devastation wreaked upon this earth over the course of the last 12 months since we met in Glasgow, whether the apocalyptic floods in Pakistan, or the heat waves from Europe to China, or indeed, in the last few days in my own region, the devastation caused in Belize by Tropical Storm Lisa, or the torrential floods a few days ago in St. Lucia. We're in the country that built pyramids. We know what it is to remove slavery from our civilization. We know what it is to be able to find a vaccine within 2 years when a pandemic hits us. We know what it is to put a man on the moon, and now we put in rover on Mars. We know what it is. But the simple political will that is necessary, not just to come here and make promises, but to deliver on them and to make a definable difference in the lives of the people who we have a responsibility to serve, seems still not to be capable of being produced.
The Belize National Teachers Union is up in arms after the Ministry of Education announced on Sunday that classes within the Belize district will resume on November 7. According to the president of the BNTU, Elena Smith, a meeting was held between union members and Ministry of Education last week, Thursday, where it was agreed that schools would reopen on the 14th of November. Now, the Ministry of Education has issued a list of schools approved for delayed reopening.
We met with the minister on Saturday. We requested a meeting with the minister. We wanted to discuss with him and get some agreements in terms of what our teachers in the Belize district were sharing with us and what were their concerns and their needs. And so we had that meeting. In that meeting, it was agreed that due to the issues that our teachers are facing, our students and even parents, who have to deal with their issues with regards to the hurricane, that it would have been best, and we agreed that the 14th would have been the back to school. But during the week of 7th to the 11th, then our teachers would be reporting to school, preparing classrooms, because some of them had to get things out to prepare for hurricane shelter. So fix back everything up, help where they could help other schools, other teachers, so that everybody could be ready for the 14th. That was the agreement that we had. We also agreed that on this week would not be a holiday, and teachers had to be told that they knew that they could not just stay home or go across the border, do whatever they wanted, but they had to report to school and do the preparations. So we left the meeting with those agreements, and we went and we gave council that report, only to find out that when the memo came out, the memo said on the 7th as normal. But that wasn't the decision that we made in the meeting. We said the 14th due to, as I said before, all of the situations happening on the ground right now. But you have to consider the fact that while the school might be ready, the school didn't suffer damage, are those teachers ready? Are the children ready? So it's not just to look at the school building to see that the building wasn't impacted. Who did the assessment? Because we visited schools and we are being told that they have not seen anybody coming to the school to do any assessment. Now, for example, a school like Doublehead, the school in Doublehead, Vale Royal Primary, they were given 3 days. They lost their entire roof. The roof is gone. How can that school be prepared to have children within 3 days? And then we are being told that, they will house them in the community center. And the center is in a similar position to the school, except it has a roof.
In Trinidad and Tobago, the opposition will not be participating in a special select committee appointed by government to develop a code of ethical conduct for senators.
In the Senate on Tuesday, Leader of Government Business Dr. Amory Brown announced the move to appoint a 6-member committee which would consider a code for senators. He said the committee would have a Senate President, Christine Kangaloo, as chairman, government senators Paula Gopi-Skoon and Dr. Mohammed Ibrahim, along with an independent senator, Anthony Vieira, and an opposition senator.
Pursuant to the motion approved in the Senate on July 6, 2022, I beg to move that a special select committee be established to consider and report on a code of ethical conduct and behavior for senators by March 31st, 2023.
Opposition Senator Wade Mark was quick to point out that they would not be participating in the Special Select Committee, but failed to give an explanation.
In international news, Australia's Minister for International Development and the Pacific, Pat Conroy, says plans are being made for Australia and the Pacific to host the UN Climate Conference in 2026. Speaking to AB reporters at COP27, Conroy said a COP co-hosted between Australia and the broader Pacific family will draw attention to the plight of the Pacific, which is most impacted by climate change, and build economic opportunities for jobs. He said he's pleased that every single Pacific nation has endorsed Australia-Pacific cooperation and begun lobbying as well where they see appropriate.
I and with my Pacific colleagues are building a case for the Pacific to host the UN Climate Conference in 2026. We think that a COP co-hosted between Australia and the broader Pacific family will draw attention to the plight of the Pacific, which is most impacted by climate change, and build economic opportunities for jobs. So I'm been spruiking the benefits of that, and I've been really pleased that every single Pacific nation has endorsed Australia Pacific COP, and they've begun lobbying as well where they see appropriate, and that's something that I think will be great for our region, a COP in the Pacific highlighting Pacific challenges.
And particularly here at COP27, could you maybe highlight two issues that are standing out at the negotiating table? What is at stake?
Well, I'm going to be cheeky and say three. Okay. So the most important one is 1.5. We must keep 1.5 alive, and we've been very strong on that. Can be no backsliding on the mitigation measures that were committed to at Glasgow. But fortunately, a few countries are backsliding, so Australia's using our negotiating heft to support Pacific efforts to avoid that. Secondly, we need stronger investment in adaptation, helping countries adapt where climate change is unavoidable. That could include seawalls, desalination plants for drinking water, and thirdly is fighting for more climate finance. And so Australia has been involved in those negotiations. They're really the three most important issues that are being discussed at this climate conference.
In sports, West Indies cricket legend Shivnaran Chanderpaul was announced as one of the new members of the International Cricket Council's Hall of Fame on Tuesday in Australia. Here's more in this report.
Famously known and revered in Trinidad and Tobago for partnering with Brian Lara during his epic world record-breaking innings of 375 in 1994, Shivnaran Chanderpaul has carved out an outstanding career of his own and is certainly worthy of his Hall of Fame selection. The left-handed Chanderpaul played at international level for over 2 decades and is among the leading run scorers in the game's history. He made his Test debut in 1994 at the age of 19 against England at border in his native Guyana. He played 164 Test matches, the most by any West Indian, and scored 11,867 runs at an average of 51.37, which included 30 centuries. He has joined a list of fellow cricketing icons who have received this prestigious honour. The ICC announced Chanderpaul will be joined in the Hall of Fame by Pakistan legendary leg spinner Abdul Qadir and England trailblazer Charlotte Edwards. He also played 268 one-day internationals and made 8,778 runs with 11 centuries at an average of 41.60. While in 22 T20 internationals, he made 343 runs. His first-class career was outstanding, with 27,545 runs in 385 matches at an average of over 53. He had 77 centuries, including a career best of 303 not out for Guyana against Jamaica. Wayne Cunningham, TTT Sport.
And that's it for the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Remember, We are the people's station.